In the dusty town of Redemption Springs, 1882, a former cavalry scout with a dark past meets the railroad heiress whose own blood want her dead. This is the story of Jacob the Ghost Morrison, a single father trying to leave violence behind, and Catherine Aldridge, the woman who would change everything. Jacob Morrison hadn't worn his guns in 3 years. Not since his wife, Sarah, died of fever, leaving him alone with their 5-year-old daughter, Emma. He'd hung up his holsters, traded his cavalry badge for a carpenter's hammer, and sworn he'd never kill again. But a man's past has a way of riding back into town. It was a scorching July morning when the stagecoach arrived. Jacob was outside the general store, Emma tugging at his hand, when he saw her Catherine Aldridge, stepping down in an emerald dress that had no business in a frontier town. She was the daughter of railroad baron Edmund Aldridge, and word was she'd just inherited the entire Western Railway Company after her father's sudden death. What Jacob didn't know yet was that Edmund Aldridge hadn't died of natural causes, and the killers were family. That very afternoon, as Catherine toured the railway office, shots rang out. 3 masked riders burst through Main Street, guns blazing. Jacob threw Emma behind a water trough, and his hands instinctively went for guns that weren't there. Catherine's own security guard fell first, a bullet through the chest. She ran, terror in her eyes, straight toward Jacob. "Get down," he shouted, shoving her behind the blacksmith's wall. The riders circled, reloading. "Please," Catherine gasped. "They're trying to kill me. My my own uncle hired them. He wants the company." Jacob looked at his daughter's frightened face, then at this desperate woman. Every instinct screamed to run, but Emma was watching. And Jacob had taken an oath once, long ago, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "Stay behind me," he growled. Jacob did something that day he swore he'd never do again. He picked up the fallen guards' revolvers and became the ghost once more. 3 shots, 3 riders down. The town fell silent. Catherine hired him on the spot. "I need protection until I can sort out who I can trust. Just a few weeks. Name your price." Jacob looked at Emma. His carpentry work barely kept food on the table. $500. "And my daughter comes with us everywhere." Catherine agreed without hesitation. They agreed to the deal right there on Main Street. $500 for a few weeks of protection. Jacob didn't know it yet, but those few weeks would change everything. They traveled to the Aldridge Estate outside Santa Fe, a sprawling ranch that was more fortress than home. But the real danger wasn't outside the walls. It was sitting at the dinner table. Catherine's uncle Victor played the grieving brother perfectly. Her cousin Marcus smiled with viper's teeth. Her Aunt Beatrice whispered poison in every conversation. They all wanted her to sign over the company, to rest after her father's death, to let the men handle business. But Catherine was her father's daughter, sharp as a Bowie knife and twice as dangerous when cornered. Jacob watched them all, his hand never far from his gun. Emma, meanwhile, befriended Catherine in a way that surprised them both. The hardened businesswoman would read stories to the little girl each night, and slowly, the ice around her heart began to thaw. It came at midnight, for men slipped over the walls. Professional killers this time, not ranch hands playing at murder. Jacob heard them first, the creak of a floorboard, the whisper of steel. He was out of bed in seconds, moving through the darkness like smoke. The first man died silently, Jacob's knife finding his throat. The second managed to shout before a bullet ended it. Then chaos erupted. Jacob kicked open Catherine's door. "Get Emma. Move now." Catherine didn't hesitate, scooping up the terrified child as Jacob laid down, covering fire. They raced through the servants' corridors while death hunted them through the halls. They ran through the darkness, Emma's small arms wrapped tight around Catherine's neck, Jacob's guns blazing behind them to keep the killers at bay. In the kitchen, the third killer cornered them. Jacob was out of bullets, his knife across the room. The man raised his shotgun, and Catherine shot him. Her hands shook as she held her father's Derringer, the one he'd taught her to shoot when she was 12. "Thank you," Jacob said quietly. "Thank you," she whispered back, tears streaming down her face. The 3 of them held each other in that kitchen, surrounded by smoke and death, but alive. alive because they protected each other. In that moment, something changed between Thema Euro, something none of them could name yet. The next morning, Uncle Victor made his move. With the local sheriff in his pocket, he accused Jacob of the attacks, calling him a violent drifter endangering the family. "He's the threat," Victor roared at the deputies. "He's trying to control my niece, to steal her inheritance through fear." Catherine stood between Jacob and the guns. "You want him? You'll have to go through me. And I'll make sure every newspaper from here to Washington knows that Victor Aldridge tried to murder his own niece." The standoff lasted an eternity. Finally, the sheriff backed down. But Victor smelled Euro cold and certain. That night, Emma disappeared. Jacob found a note pinned to his door with a knife, the company for the girl. "You have until dawn. Come alone to Devil's Canyon." Catherine found him saddling his horse, his face carved from stone. "I'm coming with you." "No, she's not just your daughter anymore, Jacob. She matters to me." He looked at her thin Euro, really Luca de Euro, and saw something that terrified him more than any gunfight. He saw someone who cared, someone he cared about in return. "Then we both go," he said. "But we do this my way." Devil's Canyon was a box canyon, perfect for an ambush. Victor and Marcus waited with a dozen hired guns. Emma sat tied to a post, brave despite her tears. But Jacob Morrison hadn't survived a dozen cavalry campaigns by being predictable. While Victor expected them to ride in from the main trail, Jacob and Catherine scaled the canyon walls in darkness. Catherine had insisted on coming, and Jacob had to admit Euro. She could shoot, ride, and climb better than most men he'd known. As dawn broke, they were in position above the canyon. "Last chance to turn back," Jacob whispered. Catherine checked her rifle. "I don't run from family fights." The battle was brutal and fast. Jacob's shots echoed like thunder, each one finding its mark. Catherine covered their flank, her aim steady. The hired guns scattered, unwilling to die for Victor's greed. Catherine fired with cold precision, each shot protecting Jacob as he advanced. She was no longer the refined railroad Heiress Euro. She was a warrior protecting her family. In the end, it came down to Marcus holding a gun to Emma's head. "Drop it, Morrison, or she dies." Jacob froze. Every nightmare he'd ever had was coming true. Then Catherine stepped into view. "Let her go, Marcus. It's me you want." "Catherine, no Euro," Jacob started. "You want the company?" she called out. "Fine, take it. Just let the child go." Uncle Victor's orders were clear, Marcus sneered. "You all die." "Victor's dead," Catherine said calmly. The canyon fell silent. "Check the ridge. Your uncle tried to run when the shooting started. He fell, broke his neck." It was true. In his panic, Victor had stumbled and tumbled down the rocks. Marcus's face went white. Without Victor, he was no thingy Euro, just a coward holding a gun. "It's over," Jacob said softly, his revolver steady. "Let my daughter go, and you can ride out of here. Stay and you die. Choose." Marcus chose life. He dropped the gun and ran. Emma ran to her father, and Jacob dropped to his knees to catch her, holding her like he'd never let go. Catherine stood watching, tears streaming down her face, her hand over her heart. 6 months later, Redemption Springs had a new sheriff Euro, Jacob Morrison. Catherine had made it happen, along with a generous donation for a new schoolhouse. Catherine herself divided her time between running the railway company and visiting a certain small town in New Mexico. Folks noticed the way she looked at the sheriff and the way his daughter called her Aunt Catherine with increasing affection. On a warm evening, Jacob found Catherine on his porch, watching the sunset. "Stay," he said simply. "I have a company to run, Jacob. Board meetings, investors Euro. Stay anyway." She smiled. "Is that an order, Sheriff?" "It's a hope." Emma burst out the door, wrapping her arms around both of them. "Papa says you might be staying forever." "Are you?" Catherine looked at this man who'd risked everything for her, and this child who'd stolen her heart. "I think I might be." Jacob Morrison had spent years running from his past. But sometimes, the right person makes you want to stop running and start living. And that's how a gunslinger became a sheriff, how an heiress became a mother, and how a promise to protect became something far greater Euro, a family forged in fire and bound by love. The end.